Top 20 Classic Creepypastas. 20. Candle Cove. Candle Cove is a 2009 story by Chris Straub written in the format of an online forum thread in which people reminisce about a half-remembered children's television series from the 1970s involving a young girl, the series protagonist, going on adventures with a cast of pirates. The posters share memories of the puppets used in the series, and discuss nightmares that they experienced after watching certain episodes, such as those involving a villain called the Skin Taker, and one that had no dialogue and involved the puppets screaming relentlessly while the protagonist was reduced to hysterical crying. One poster then asks their mother about the series and is told that the mother just used to tune the television to static, which the child would watch for 30 minutes. Sci-Fi announced a television drama based on the story in 2015, adapted by Nick Antosca and Max Landis. The story makes up the first season of Channel Zero, which premiered on October 11, 2016. 19. SuicideMouse.avi. SuicideMouse.avi is a 9-minute Mickey Mouse video uploaded to YouTube in 2009, with the video posing as being forgotten Mickey Mouse footage made by Walt Disney himself during the 1920s golden age of American animation. The banned cartoon begins with a 3-minute animation loop of Mickey walking down a street with a dull, almost depressed look on his face. All the while, the sound of a piano being played poorly can be heard in the background. After the 6-minute mark, the video cuts to black as the sound of TV white noise replaces the original banging piano music. The video then cuts back to Mickey, who starts sneering after a while, and the sound of a garbled cry can be heard. It is at the 8-minute mark that the audio changes once again, this time to a woman screaming in agony, and as the screams get louder and louder, the picture changes. The streets and sidewalks Mickey is walking on start to travel in impossible directions, while the buildings look destroyed. Mickey's face begins to fall apart as his eyeballs roll to the bottom of his chin like marbles in a fish bowl. His smile creeps up to the left side of his head, and eventually he ends up looking demented. The screaming continues until the 9-minute mark when the episode ends, while the original story and footage of Mickey ends there. One interpretation shows a scene with Mickey spinning and then falling to the ground, dying, and a demon appears, making a loud screeching noise, before disappearing. An image of Mickey's head appears on the screen, similarly to the ending of classical Mickey Mouse cartoons around the time, for approximately 30 seconds, while what sounds like a broken music box plays in the background, with a Russian text that roughly reads, "The sights of hell bring its viewers back in." The remaining 30 seconds is supposedly unknown to the public, though it is suggested that whatever took place during those last 30 seconds was so mentally traumatic, that it resulted in the employee who first screened the episode committing suicide after watching it and uttering the phrase "real suffering is not known." (18) Dead Bart. Dead Bart is a story by writer K.I. Simpson. It features the Simpson family going on a plane trip together, but while being his usual, mischievous self, Bart ends up breaking a window on the plane and getting sucked out, falling to his death. After an apparently very realistic view of his corpse, the show's second act features a surreal take on the Simpson family's grief. Act 3 opens with a title card saying 1 year has passed. Homer, Marge, and Lisa are skeletally thin, and still sitting at the table. There is no sign of Maggie or the pets. They decide to visit Bart's grave. Springfield is completely deserted, and as they walk to the cemetery, the houses become more and more decrepit. Emotionally abandoned, they arrive at Bart's grave, where Bart's body is simply lying in front of his tombstone, appearing similar to the corpse in Act 1. The family starts crying again, but eventually, they stop and blankly stare at Bart's body. Near the end, the camera starts to zoom into Homer's face, and according to summaries, Homer also tells a joke during this part. In a later update, it's revealed that Homer is saying, "If only we were all that lucky." The episode ends with a zoom out of the cemetery, featuring the names of every single Simpsons guest star on the tombstones, with the ones that have not died yet all having the same death date. 17. Cupcakes, originally posted to the /co/board of 4chan by Drecker Jones, under the pen name Sergeant Sprinkles. Cupcakes is a fanfiction based on the show My Little Pony, Friendship is Magic. In the story, Rainbow Dash visits Pinkie Pie after getting invited by her to the bakery. Rainbow Dash was told she'd be making cupcakes with Pinkie Pie, however, Pinkie Pie knocks her out with a drink. Rainbow Dash is taken to a dark room full of severed pony heads. Pinkie Pie states that she will be making cupcakes out of Rainbow Dash. The story describes the ways Pinkie Pie mutilates Rainbow Dash to death. The story ends with Apple Bloom joining Pinkie Pie, who is now making cupcakes out of Diamond Tiara. 16. Rainbow Factory, created by internet user Aurora Dawn. Rainbow Factory is a fanfiction of My Little Pony, Friendship is Magic, that tells the story of two Pegasi, Scootaloo and Orion, who fail a flight test due to trying to help a third Pegasus, Aurora, who broke their wing while flying. They are transferred to a large weather factory that is managed by Rainbow Dash. After being locked in a large room with several others, Rainbow Dash reveals how rainbows are made through the use of mutilated, live Pegasi being put through a machine called a Pegasus device that converts their corpses into individual colors, known as spectra, which are then mixed to make rainbows. After attempting to retaliate against Rainbow Dash and the cruelty in the factory, Orion is chained up to the machine and is twisted until his ribs shatter, before being tossed in the device. Scootaloo attempts to escape from a now maniacal and insane Rainbow Dash, but is proven fruitless as she is captured by guards and attached to the machine, where she utters her last words to Rainbow Dash, "You have beautiful eyes." The ending of the story is ambiguous as to her fate. There is a sequel to this set 20 years later, centered around two other foals who escape being turned into rainbows, and the lives of the workers in the weather factory. 15. Ben Drowned, created by internet user Alex Hall, aka Jajasable, Ben Drown tells a story of a college student only identified as Jaja Sable who buys a used copy of the video game The Legend of Zelda: Majora's Mask from an elderly man at a yard sale. Jaja Sable finds that the cartridge is haunted by the ghost of a boy named Ben, who drowned, as well as an entity that seems to have taken his name only identified as Ben, and an enigmatic force known as the Father. After performing the fourth day glitch, Jaja Sable encounters disturbing glitches and ominous messages such as "You shouldn't have done that," and "You've met with a terrible fate, haven't you?" and begins to encounter Ben in the game, who takes the form of the Elegy of Emptiness statue. The story would later spiral into an alternate reality game with the introduction of an in-universe website belonging to the Moon Children, a mysterious cult. After an 8-year-long hiatus, the story returned in 2020, once again in the alternate reality game format, for its final arc, dubbed Awakening, which featured adjacent plotlines about a man calling himself Jadis recounting his experiences during a societal collapse due to a virus known as Her.O.E.S, people waking up in a mysterious hotel run by a man named Abel, and a return to the haunted Majora's Mask cartridge. 14. Herobrine. Originally posted by an anonymous user on 4chan, Herobrine is a supernatural being or ghost that haunts single-player worlds of the sandbox video game Minecraft. The character is supposed to look like Steve, one of the default character skins available for new players of Minecraft, except for a pair of glowing white eyes which lack pupils. Theories which explain the Herobrine's supposed origins range from his purported identity as the supposedly deceased brother of Minecraft creator Marcus Persson, to an unlucky miner who haunt living players out of a desire for vengeance. 13. Sonic.exe. Sonic.exe is a creepypasta created by JC the Hyena. The original story follows a teenager named Tom, who receives a CD from his friend Kyle and a note telling him to destroy it. Finding Kyle's warning to be a joke, Tom decides to play it, finding it to be a haunted version of Sonic the Hedgehog, 1991. The haunted version of the game contains an eldritch entity known as X, who takes on a form almost identical to Sonic, with bloodied, black eyes and glowing red pupils. In each of the 3 levels, Tom plays as Tails, Knuckles, and Dr. Eggman, only for them to be killed and enslaved by X at the end of them. After all the characters are killed, a hyper-realistic image of the character appears with the caption "I am God." Tom turns around, only to see a stuffed Sonic toy crying blood on his bed, his fate unknown. 12. Slender Man. Slender Man is a lanky humanoid with no distinguishable facial features, who wears a trademark black suit. The character originated in a 2009 something awful Photoshop competition, before later being featured as a main antagonist in the Marble Hornets alternate reality game. According to most stories, he targets younger people who supposedly go into his forest looking for him. The legend also caused controversy with the Slender Man stabbing in 2014. 2 12-year-old girls stabbed one of their friends, leaving her in the forest to die. The stabbing victim survived the assault, crawled her way out of the forest, and got help. The two girls were arrested and, when questioned, revealed they attempted to kill their friend because Slender Man would kill their family if they didn't. The character is featured in various films, television series, and video games and is fondly remembered as one of the most iconic internet urban legends of the 2010s. 11. Jeff the Killer. Jeff the Killer is a story accompanied by an image of the title character. In the most notable version of the Jeff the Killer story, which originated in 2011, a teenager named Jeffrey Woods is attacked by a group of bullies. The fight ends with Jeff being nearly arrested for assault, which his brother Lou takes the blame for, getting taken away, resulting in Jeff becoming depressed and introverted. His concerned parents force him to go to a party, where he gets approached by the same bullies he got in a fight with before. There, the bullies doused him with alcohol and set him on fire. After being discharged from the hospital and having his bandages removed, Jeff becomes insane, carving his own face to leave a smile-shaped scar, burning off his eyelids, and killing his family. He becomes a serial killer who sneaks into houses at night and whispers "go to sleep" to his victims before killing them. The story quickly became one of the most popular creepypastas and would inspire many other stories, including Jane the Killer. The character of Jeff was created by DeviantArt user Cesar. The story above wasn't made by Cesar himself, but rather a fan of his earlier work. Cesar began posting about Jeff on Newgrounds in 2008 under the alias Killer Jeff, describing a Bloody Mary-like ritual which supposedly can be performed to summon Jeff. According to the original story, Jeff accidentally spilled a bucket of acid on his face while trying to clean his bathtub. A 2013 article asserted that the original image of Jeff the Killer was an extensively edited picture of a girl who committed suicide in the fall of 2008 due to people online ridiculing her appearance. However, in 2018, after extensive research done by the users of 4chan/x/paranormal board, this rumor was debunked. The earliest known instances of the image that was used in the creepypasta appearing online at the time had been found on the Japanese image board website pya.cc, dating back to September and November 2005. In 2022, an even earlier instance of the image was found dating back to July 2005. 10. Ted the Caver. Ted the Caver began as an Angelfire website in early 2001 that documented the adventures of a man and his friends as they explored a local cave. The story is in the format of a series of blog posts. As the explorers move further into the cave, strange hieroglyphs and winds are encountered. In a final blog post, Ted writes that he and his companions would be bringing a gun into the cave after experiencing a series of nightmares and hallucinations. The blog has not been updated since the final post. In 2013, an independent film adaptation of the story was released, called Living Dark, the story of Ted the Caver. 9. Teddy. A little boy is terrified of his sister's new teddy bear. As the boy grows up, the teddy bear haunts the boy by sitting on his bed, and getting closer as he blinks. After years of horror, he burned up Teddy for good. Now, at 19 years old, moving into his own place. While unpacking, he discovered Teddy sitting in the living room, staring at him. 8. Haunted Kaishin Hospital. This story is about a viral ghost video that has been on YouTube for years. In 2009, a Japanese TV crew goes to a haunted hospital to explore, saying that it is a popular place for teenagers to hang out and ghost hunt, and also a hot place for catching spirits in photos. The reporter interviews a man who claims that he and some friends went into the hospital to test their courage and take photos, but they soon encountered bizarre circumstances and one of them was injured. The noticeably scared reporter agrees to explore and begins poking around the hospital. She begins taking photos as she wanders the dark halls. She soon, however, finds the camera that the kids dropped during their own visit. As she looks through the images, she begins to see strange things appear in the frame. Suddenly, she lets out a blood-curdling scream. The video then explains that they were able to later slow down the footage, and spotted a ghostly nurse standing in a doorway, reflected in a mirror. After the reporter's screams, the cameraman goes off on his own, only to encounter a ghostly surgeon holding what appears to look like a baby covered in blood and screams. The footage repeats but slowed down.
このカメラ、怪我をした男性が落としたカメラですね。何か不気味なものが映ってます。なんだろう。
Seven. Ghost Ambulance in Monterrey, Mexico. This next creepypasta story is a series of real-life videos that come from Monterrey, Mexico. According to the story, a man was murdered on the street of Ave del Paraíso, San Nicolas de los Garza, Nuevo León. He was taken to the scene aboard a car, and his perpetrators shot him at point-blank range. He passed away just as the ambulance arrived to pick him up. The roadside cross now marks the site of the tragic event. But here's where things get strange. Drivers began to realize that every time they drive by this roadside cross while listening to radio station 690 AM, their car stereo reception was interrupted by the unexplainable sound of an ambulance siren.
Ya vemos la cruz ahí. No mames, güey. No mames, güey.
Ahí está la cruz.
No mames, güey. No mames.
Ahí está la cruz en la orilla que
No mames, güey. Se siente bien ojete, güey.
No te pases.
se siente bien pesado.
Se siente el ambiente
se
bien.
siente bien feo.
¿Regresamos? Sí.
No mames, güey. Güey, mira, güey. Güey. No mames, güey.
Ahí vamos. Por allá está la cruz. Dale lento, más lento. ¡A la madre! ¿Dónde está la cruz? Dale.
Ay. Dios mío. Ay. Ya, dale. Vámonos. ¿Qué se escuchó? ¿Escuchaste?
Güey, ¿qué te
¿Oye?
hizo, primo?
Uy, más agudo.
Dios mío. Se escuchó.
Tantas evidencias no pueden ocultarse. Esto es una realidad absoluta. El mundo ahora está con la dimensión deportiva. Un enfoque diferente del deporte. Con Roberto Hernández Contreras, Víctor Manuel Hernández y Roberto Hernández Barocio.
¿Qué dice?
6. Waverley Hills Sanatorium, a Kentucky hospital that was once the last stop for thousands of people sickened by tuberculosis, is now a popular haunt among ghost hunters and paranormal enthusiasts who say some of the former patients still lurk behind creaky doors and in lonely patient rooms. The public can tour the Waverley Hills Sanatorium in Louisville, including the underground tunnel where the dead were once hauled away, their bodies often rejected by relatives terrified of contracting the disease. When you have that kind of death, you can't help but to think there might be a spirit lingering around that just isn't happy, said Charlie Mattingly, who owns the building. Waverley Hills is listed alongside other vacant institutional buildings, like the Eastern State Penitentiary in Philadelphia and West Virginia's Trans-Allegheny Lunatic Asylum, that have become a popular destination for ghost hunters, thanks to a chilling real-life history. The site also has been featured on several ghost and Halloween-themed television shows. It's almost an everyday occurrence here when we have the overnighters come in. They all claim they see apparitions, ghosts, shadow movements, things like that, Mattingly said. Mattingly, whose father worked at Waverley Hills, said he has records showing thousands died at the hospital before it was closed as a TB facility in 1961 after the development of antibiotics that could treat the disease. The hospital was one of many built in the early part of the 20th century for patients of tuberculosis, who were highly contagious and needed to be isolated from the general public. Mattingly and others who now operate tours at the site said Waverley Hills has a few popular ghost legends that generate the most inquiries from visitors. They include the stories of a nurse who committed suicide on one of the upper floors, an angry, unwelcoming older male, and the spirit of a small child nicknamed Timmy, who plays with balls that are placed around the hospital. Mike Flickner, a guide and paranormal investigator at Waverley Hills, said he has been convinced for years the place is filled with spirits of the dead. 5. Smile Dog. If there's any story on this list that best captures the message "be careful what you wish for," Smile Dog is it. The creepypasta deals with an image posted on an old bulletin board system back in 1992 called smile.jpg. Those who saw the image either disappeared or died, save for one Mary E., who the narrator goes to interview. What he eventually learns is that some things, even simple pictures, are better left as mysteries than dealing with the horrifying truth. In case you were wondering, the story does come with an accompanying image, but you may not want to see it after reading the full story. Though, in the end, you may not have a choice. 4. Annabelle. Annabelle is an allegedly haunted Raggedy Ann doll that is housed in the Occult Museum of the paranormal investigators Ed and Lorraine Warren. Annabelle was moved there after supposed hauntings in 1970. A character based on the doll is one of the antagonists that appears in the Conjuring universe. According to the Warrens, a student nurse was given the doll in 1970. They said that the doll behaved strangely, and that a psychic medium told the student that the doll was inhabited by the spirit of a deceased girl named Annabelle. The student and her roommate tried to accept and nurture the spirit-possessed doll, but the doll reportedly exhibited malicious and frightening behavior. It was at this point that the Warrens say they were first contacted, moving the doll to their museum after pronouncing it demonically possessed. The doll remained in a glass box at the Warrens Occult Museum in Monroe, Connecticut until the museum's closing. Texas State University Assistant Professor of Religious Studies Joseph Laycock says most skeptics have dismissed the Warrens Museum as full of off-the-shelf Halloween junk, dolls, and toys, books you could buy at any bookstore. Laycock calls the Annabelle legend an interesting case study in the relationship between pop culture and paranormal folklore and speculates that the demonic doll trope popularized by films such as Child's Play, Dolly Dearest, and The Conjuring likely emerged from early legends surrounding Robert the Doll, as well as from a Twilight Zone episode released 5 years prior to the Warrens story, entitled Living Doll, in which the character of the mother is named Annabelle. Laycock suggests that the idea of demonically possessed dolls allows modern demonologists to find supernatural evil in the most banal and domestic of places. Commenting on publicity for the Warrens Occult Museum coinciding with the film release of The Conjuring, science writer Sharon A. Hill said that many of the myths and legends surrounding the Warrens have seemingly been of their own doing and that many people may have difficulty separating the Warrens from their Hollywood portrayal. Hill criticized sensational press coverage of the Warrens Occult Museum and its Annabelle doll. She said, like real-life Ed Warren, real-life Annabelle is actually far less impressive. Of the supernatural claims made about Annabelle by Ed Warren, Hill said, "We have nothing but Ed's word for this, and also for the history and origins of the objects in the museum." The doll was also described in Gerald Brittle's 1980 biography of the Warrens, The Demonologist. 3. Sally Williams. Sally Mariam Williams, more commonly known as just Sally, is the main protagonist of the creepypasta story Play With Me. She is a female spirit who was killed by her uncle and is relatively passive in nature, especially towards kids. 2. Laughing Jack. Laughing Jack is the titular main antagonist of the creepypasta story of the same name. He is a sadistic killer clown who was originally an imaginary friend to a little boy. That is until the boy forgot about him. Follow his story through being made, forgotten, and becoming a sadistic killer clown, who now seeks to murder young children. 1. Robert the Doll. Robert Eugene Otto was a young boy who lived in Key West, Florida with his parents. In 1904, he got a gift from his grandfather while he was on a trip to Germany. It was a stiff clown doll, and Gene immediately became attached to his new best friend. He even named the doll Robert, after himself. And from that point onwards, he only preferred to go by his middle name, Gene. Soon after, strange things would start to happen around the house. Household objects would be found missing or broken, and every time Gene's parents asked him what happened, he would always say, "Robert did it." Sometimes his parents would hear their son talking to Robert in his playroom, and they would hear another child's voice respond, but when they opened the door, they would only find their son and the doll. Eventually the Ottos have had enough of the strange paranormal activity, and locked Robert the doll in a box in the attic. The sailor suit that the doll now wears is a real one that Gene used to wear himself. Gene grew up to become an artist, and he married a beautiful woman, named Annette Parker. Gene was given his childhood home as a wedding gift. In the attic, he finds his old friend, Robert, and he immediately became attached to his best friend yet again. Annette didn't really like the doll. In fact, she was very creeped out by it. Ever since Gene found Robert, strange things began to happen again. Annette swore that Robert could change his facial expressions and move by himself. Gene died in 1974 and Annette sold the house to Myrtle. In 1994, Myrtle donated Robert to the Fort East Martello Museum after she encountered strange paranormal activity. Robert the doll still lives at the East Martello Museum, sitting on a chair inside a glass box. If you want to take a picture of him, you must ask nicely. If you take his picture without asking or disrespect him in any way, he will get angry and curse you with bad luck. Each year, he gets 1,000s of letters of apologies from former skeptics who disrespected him, and begging him to take the curse back.